Gotham Knights was hyped up to be an open-world co-op action game where you and your friends played as either Batwoman, Robin, Nightwing, or Red Hood. Its plot revolved around uncovering the mystery around Batman's death. I mean, that sounds interesting enough, right? It released last October and it just belly flopped into the landfill of mediocre reception. Critics and fans alike hated the boring combat, predictable story, and slow, repetitive progression. But from what I saw, it was just another run-of-the-mill, unfinished open-world game with all the hallmarks of poorly thought-out systems. There's crafting, side events, a leveling mechanic, and of course a skill tree to go along with it. All of it seemed very bland and poorly thought out. So I decided, hey, I'ma just finally get around to playing the Arkham series instead. And I have no regrets. But I hate being presumptuous, so I didn't want to definitively say that this game was bad without even playing it. So after 5 months and getting it in a humble bundle, I decided to try it out and ask and answer the question, is Gotham Knights good yet? In the age of live service games can just release incomplete with missing features and bugs out the ass, and oftentimes developers will promise to make the game better with updates. Now that it's been like 5 months since the game released, they've solved a lot of performance-related issues without really adding much in the vein of content updates or DLC. So what we have here is essentially the same game that released last year, but with better performance, so that's good, I guess. So without further ado, let's get into it. Gotham Knights starts out with a long-ass cinematic showing the death of Batman, and let me tell you, this man does not go down easy. While in the Batcave, he gets jumped by this mysterious figure who's revealed to be Ra's al Ghul. Big surprise, right? They fight for a bit and Batman ends up nuking the place like he got a 25 kill streak in Call of Duty. With Batman dead, his mantle is left to the rest of the Bat family, and this is where the actual game starts, with finding out the mystery of Batman's death. Now, I think this could have been done better. Honestly, killing Batman in the first cutscene is just wild. I mean, we didn't even get a chance to know this Batman, so him dying just does nothing for me. Back to the game itself, I want to start with the good aspects I found in the game, although a lot of them are a bit underdeveloped, so this might sound like some backhanded compliments. First, let's talk about the combat. Yes, it's underdeveloped, but I think they made a strong foundation for the game, with X being melee and Y being a ranged attack. You can hold either button to do a stronger attack, which can stagger an enemy or break their shield. Animations are smooth and flow decently well with each other, although they could improve by adding a bit more enemy types than just generic goon number 45. They could have used more of Batman's gadgets, kind of like a certain Rocksteady game that released before this game. I mean, you may have heard of it. But instead, they decided to use a special move-like system lifted straight out of an RPG. All in all, though, I found its combat enjoyable enough to get through, albeit its lack of variety in combat moves and enemies was draining. Another thing that's worth mentioning is its story. I mean, it's pretty run-of-the-mill, and Jason Todd acts like he's one MCR song away from dyeing his hair green and attending Warped Tour. I mean, seriously, that man is edgy. But it isn't offensively bad. It's actually quite enjoyable as far as superhero stories go. All the fan favorite Batman characters are here and they're portrayed accurately. I also like how every time you leave the safe house, it's treated as one night. Your progress and the crimes you've stopped is recorded after each night. It doesn't really add much to the game, but it helped make me feel like I'm actually working on stopping crime in Gotham night by night, as opposed to the Arkham series where Batman stops like 800 crimes in the span of one single night. Seriously, this ain't Dragon Ball Z. You can't stretch time like that. Although a problem I have with the night-by-night approach is that story progression is halted frequently, as after most missions you have to report back to the Belfry, watch a cutscene, and then start a new night. What else? Is that it? I guess that's all the good things I have to say. Let's move on to the bad. The first glaring issue I have with this game is how much it relies on these overused RPG elements that, in my opinion, just do not belong in this game. First of all, leveling. You need to keep your character leveled up in order to match the levels of enemies for each story mission, which eventually ramps up and up. This incentivizes this repetitive loop of combat even further as you have to level up, and it just tired me out eventually. The crafting system is somehow too simple yet too obtuse thanks to the confusing UI. Character traversal is a massive step down from Arkham Knight. In Gotham Knights, instead of the Batmobile, you get the Bat-Cycle, which would be cool if the Bat-Cycle didn't drive at comically slow speeds. This thing drives like those mobility scooters a grandma would drive than an actual motorcycle. It's actually mind-boggling how boring they made driving this thing. I chose Batgirl as my main, and her mobility option is her cape, and again, it just isn't as good as the cape gliding in the Arkham series. It's just too slow. Arkham games have this visceral speed and the challenge of diving to gain as much altitude as possible, so you can glide as far and fast as possible. Gotham Knights gliding feels like I'm flying a kite. Combat. Yes, I know I put that as a positive, but my criticisms about it being repetitive are true, and it started to bore me out the more I played this game. The more encounters I had, the more I realized that I could just solve any encounter by just dodging and pressing X. The special moves were just optional flavorings I could use. All in all, I think I'll keep playing as I'm a fan of Batman, but the game itself is just so mediocre it gets hard to play. I'd probably give it like a 5 out of 10. If you're a fan of Batman, give the game a try or just watch the cutscenes on YouTube, but otherwise just don't get this game, bro.